And joining me now is David Hawkins. He's the editor of the Fulcrum here in Washington. He helps us break down some of the big stories that are going on in the nation's capital. And David, I want to talk to you about Syria because it stood out to me, Senate Republicans have not been eager to speak out against the president, but they seem to have a little bit more eagerness to talk out against the decision to basically withhold and virtually abandon our Kurdish allies in Syria.
That's right. So that's right. It's been a long time coming for critics of the president, for the small but persistent group of so-called never-Trumpers in the Republican Party. They have been waiting, some would say, 3 years for this moment, for a moment where something that the president did, either on policy or in with terms of his own personal behavior, would get the Republicans riled up, the fellow Republicans riled up. And this has definitely done it. This is Lindsey Graham, who went from a persistent critic to a really dogged ally of President Trump's, is now working with Nancy Pelosi to advance legislation in Congress that would essentially repudiate the president's decision. So you've got not just the Mitt Romneys of the world, who are somewhat persistent Trump critic, Marco Rubio, Cory Gardner, Lindsey Graham, almost the entire leadership on national security in the House, Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House, all saying the president's position on this is wrong.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's any correlation between this and obviously the other big story in Washington, which is the impeachment. Is there any bleed over from one or the other? Can you see them impacting each other at all?
I think it has got to, at some level, sort of soften the Republican loyalty to the president. Nobody has yet said this that in so many words, but if the Republicans collectively come to question the president's judgment, I think many Republicans believe that they know more about this than the president, or are convinced that they know more about this than the president. It is true that senators, especially, many senators have been to that region. They've looked the Kurds in the eye. They've made a commitment. So I think as time goes forward, this is certainly not something that helps the president as he's trying to mount a defense on impeachment, to have these Republicans who he needs to stand by him feel that he's made really a huge error in judgment.
And David, as you mentioned, we've seen some high-profile Republicans speak out against the White House and President Trump on this, but where are Democrats?
I think this is really an issue where the president is pretty isolated from the entire Congress, from the entire foreign policy establishment. The military hasn't broken with him publicly yet, but the reporting, not my own reporting, but other reporting that I've read, is that there's a lot of anxiety within the Pentagon. So as I said, Nancy Pelosi, Lindsey Graham, when they work together, that signals a big bipartisan agreement that something needs to be different. You've seen Chuck Schumer on this. You have seen all the Democratic presidential candidates, I believe, have come out in opposition to the president. So it's a unified front that the president's made a big mistake.
Yeah, and obviously we're just about a year away from the next presidential election, so we'll see what kind of impact it'll have when it comes to that. Yeah, David, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. For more stories like these, you can check out the Fulcrum at thefulcrum.us.